you're with Denise Abdul-Rahman with the Chisholm Legacy Projects. And we're very fortunate that we have Jennifer Uchendu, which she'll correct me on how I mispronounced her name. And we're just only have her for a brief moment, but we're going to rock this show because it's so important to have all these voices, to have this live stream and just connect us all with what's going on across the globe. She and I are both here in Egypt, and she's going to share who you are, who your community is, however you define that. And then if you can share like what you've been hearing at the COP27. Thank you so much for making time.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. It's such a pleasure. My name is Jennifer Uchendu. I'm from Nigeria, based in Lagos, and I run a community called Susty Vibes. We're a community of young people who make the idea of sustainability actionable, relatable for other young people. So we do a lot of pop culture integration and arts. I'm at COP27 this year, particularly to lend my voice to demand for loss and damage financing. More importantly, focusing on non-economic loss and damage. So the damage that impact ecological well-being. So I've been doing a lot of things for Africans and how Africans can safeguard this emotion to build the requisite psychological climate resilience that we need. I've only been at COP for about 3 days now, or 2 days, so to say, and it's been interesting. There's been mixed reaction. You know, it's said it's the Africa COP, but is it really delivering on being the Africa COP in terms of conversations, diversity? I sit in conversations with people and they say they are hopeful. And I mean, we don't have a choice, you know, than to be hopeful. Nigeria, for example, where I live and come from, have just experienced the worst flooding in decades. So when we talk about the climate crisis, it's no longer something existential and futuristic. This is something we're having to live with and grapple with. So we don't have any choice than to be hopeful. I was very fortunate today to attend negotiations for loss and damage. It was my very first time as an observer sitting in, you know, the room and watching, you know, countries debate and negotiate around loss and damage, whether they need to fund it, whether it needs to be supported. And it was really interesting. You know, one argument that ensued was around the amount of time that rich countries have to speak, and then the time given to, you know, African countries, South Africa, the small island countries and whatnot. So we saw kind of that power toggle only just, you know, even just playing out in conversations, you know, and the US, the big countries saying we need XYZ before we can even consider having conversations around this funding. And it was really interesting. I must say that, you know, these are just informal consultations, but they're important. They send, you know, that kind of messaging to say there's definitely a power play that speaks to the climate injustice, that speaks to the reality that we face, particularly people like us in the global south who continually have to demand for support, continually have to justify the need for compensation for loss and damage. And that's just the reality. And I've also been very fortunate to come out to alternative spaces. You know, I'm right here at Culture COP. You know, I'm looking for spaces where people, community organizers, artists, everyone is coming together to think of what can we do outside of the technicalities of COP. How can we push the needle? How can we take action? How can we inspire people to build resilience? And for that, I'm really grateful. You know, I saw that momentum at COP26 to see it really come out, to have events in the museum, you know, shows progress. And, you know, it's really, really hopeful for me seeing that a lot of people, particularly in the art and culture community, are coming together and thinking of ways that they can, you know, build conversations that are globally relevant so that in a year's time, you know, when we think about what progress have we made, we can see, you know, beyond COP, that things have really changed. More people are more resilient, more people, are optimistic, and will I say, in terms of their climate emotions, are more aware and grounded to the reality that the climate is changing, and we really need to come together and rethink our idea of solidarity. I would say that is one argument I've always had. I didn't see that happen in the negotiation rooms. There were lots of conditionalities and power toggles, but I think we need to rethink our idea of solidarity. We're all impacted by the climate crisis one way or the other. We're all literally in the same, what's that thing they say? We're all in the same sea, just on different boats. You know what I mean? So people are feeling it more, but we all need to work together. We all need to support each other. We all need to see the climate crisis as something that impacts all of us, together, and we need to support. And that's the way, I've seen it. That's the mindset I'm coming to COP with. That's the mindset I'm hoping in terms of conversations with different people, to safeguard our climate emotion and to build that requisite resilience that is needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was so informative. You're sharing about how your collective, and I think a lot of collectives right now are demanding that loss and damage be top priority, that there be exclusive public investments within the African diaspora or the continent of Africa and others that are on the front lines of this, climate crisis and its impacts. Did you, how intentional do you think, which I think you pretty much have eluded or said, but how intentional do you think these negotiators are at all thinking about how racist systems are, really at the core of the injustice in the continent of Africa or elsewhere, or in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, that's such a good question that oftentimes it's a lot about just brushing over the issue, to say, oh, the crisis is here, we're all impacted one way or the other. But a lot of times that's deep thinking and reflection on how did we even get here with the crisis? How did it get so bad? And when you think about it, the climate change is rooted in colonial histories of oppression and extractivism. And there's just been a lot of collecting, and people, Black people, people of color have been marginalized for, centuries and histories. And we see that play out in even regular conversations. I saw that play out today in the negotiation rooms, that power play, to say who has the right to speak, who has something to say, who wants to make demands, and there was a particular, conversation around, yes, we know this is urgent, but we're not going to rush. We're going to take our time. And I'm thinking in my seat, my people are dying, back at home. We need to rush. If it was your grandchild, your daughter who was in that position, you would do everything you can to save them. So that's the reality. It's just unfair. It's not practical and it's not ethical, but that's the reality of, climate change conversations. And it's just what it is. But we continue to organize. We continue to, create action. We continue to be activists and push, recognizing that this indeed is a marathon. So this is something we're going to be doing for a very long time, because the reality is that the system is just biased, unfortunately. But that's just what it is.
Yes. Could I just ask you one more question? And then I know that you have a very important engagement, and we just really appreciate having your voice, having your leadership, what you bring to your collective. And it really is relationships and all of us together. And, I really do feel fierce urgency of now. And I just don't think that a lot of those negotiators are really thinking about that. And just something that, you know, I didn't plan to ask this, but I do kind of wonder your opinion. I had heard that there's only like one African negotiator at the table. Maybe I'm wrong. If you could, do you think there should be more? Do you have an opinion, or am I mistaken? And then when we think about the fierce urgency of now, because you said people are dying, I haven't really heard people really call for like 1 degree, you know, or 1.25 degrees, because I just don't think 1.5 degrees is enough anymore. Mm-hmm. And there's the interpanel of governmental panel on climate change that basically says we have about 7 years. But of course, there's areas, particularly in your continent, but there's Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and so forth.
Pakistan.
That, that it's very tragic. And then, this loss and damage where people have to, where their governments have to get loans for calamities that they had no responsibility for. So, but any of that I just said that you willing to respond to?
Well, yes, I did pick up on that. You know, this is my first time in a negotiation room, and I kept asking, where are the Africans? You know, and I actually asked one of the negotiators, and she said they're organized as the African Group of Negotiators. So it means that, you know, most of those countries came together to speak, you know, through one negotiator. And I didn't think it was a good arrangement. You know, I think everyone should have a seat at the table, you know, to be able to place their demands. But they know best. They have the experience in terms of negotiating. Maybe there's power in coming together and having one voice. But I'll see about it, you know, in terms of the success we make over the next couple of days. But it was really interesting to see that kind of arrangement. Yeah.
Okay, so it's maybe a strategic reason, one Africa, one voice. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. And again, don't want to, well, I would like to keep you, but I'm going to let you go.
Thank you.
Is there any other closing comment you want to make before you leave? Thank you.
I mean, really appreciative of the opportunity. I'd like for people to, you know, look up our work, Susty Vibes. It's sustivibes.org. You know, see the work we do with Nigerians and young people, and particularly in eco-anxiety. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here. Good night.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
So you heard it here first on the Global Afrobeat. That was Jennifer from Nigeria, and she's in that negotiation room. She's young, she's listening, and she's really trying to push the paradigm for change. I don't know if we have any live listeners, but whether we do or not, one, you know, it's important for you to be in this global space, to begin to get more information around what the Conference of Parties 27 is about. You know, this also was probably one of the blackest embarkments ever in the history of a Conference of Parties. And we are here in Egypt, in the northern continent of Africa, part of Africa. And, you know, this is the Black People's COP, the Afro-Descendants COP. Why is that? You know, I'm sure all of us can tell different stories, right, about the flooding that's happening, the food apartheid conditions, the hurricanes, the cyclones, the burning of the wildfires that are happening, and then all of this migration. Think about when Haiti had a massive earthquake and the Haitians were trying to flee to the United States and other places as really Black climate refugees. And many of them were put back on an airplane and sent back home. We are in a climate crisis right now. We need you to be contacting or doing what you can do in your communities, writing climate action plans, telling us while we're here at this COP27 what you want us to be telling these negotiators, since we're here on behalf of your communities. So be sure to go ahead and contact the Chisholm Legacy Project. Again, this global Afrobeat is really an extension of a global Afro-Descendent climate justice collaborative that was formed with Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance and the Chisholm Legacy Project. We will continue to build, share information, build the political will to be able to transform our communities so that we can adapt and mitigate from these really systemic racist systems that do not want to move the money to our communities, that do not want to invest in our communities, and that's across the globe. So thank you for joining. And we also have a resolution on race, racism, and climate reparations that we've been socializing at Chisholm Legacy on Twitter, and also on the Chisholm Legacy Project Facebook. So please sign your organizations on to that resolution and join us in this very important movement. Thank you for joining us on the Global Afrobeat.